I try to do as many informational things as I can on these videos. That's what they were supposed to be when we started it. And I'll get people writing and say, oh, I don't do that or whatever. I don't care what you don't do, and nobody else does either. The idea of this is it's all a combination of ideas. Just take them if you don't use them, but at least it's in your repertoire, right? Nothing ever works all the time. Nobody catches fish all the time. Nothing always works. And so it's kind of fun to have a bunch of backups. If you're getting your ass kicked, it's not a bad idea to try something different. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff today. I'm going to go through just single hook with a bead, single hook with a swivel, 2-fly rigs, like bait fish imitations for early spring. And we're just going to show you different techniques and stuff to use. I've got a 2-fly rig, and I've got a little bit more than 16 inches here to the knot. And you can do this any way you want. You don't have to do a dropper loop, and I do this particularly in the spring when there's a lot of bait fish around, and I've got 2 small flies on. Usually I do a smoke wagon. This is, I don't even know the name of this. I just saw it in the bin. It's a really cool looking little fly. And this is this is a jig streamer that's came up with last year. It's nothing. It's marabou and a little bit of predator wrap on it. And so, but I put a dropper loop on it like you do a nymph or a wet fly. And you don't have to. You can go eye to hook. You can do that very simply. The only disadvantage to that is I might want to change this out. And I can change that 4 or 5 times before it's short. And it doesn't impede. They'll ride just fine. This is a heavier fly on the end that's going to jig. This one will be bouncing above it. And we'll see how it goes. We'll get down there a little ways, see how it's working, and then we'll start doing some wade fishing and go from there. All right, I'm going to try not to swear ever. It's not really swearing.
And I don't swear, it's not ladylike.
Don't straighten hooks with your teeth. So we crossed over here. Usually this time of year with this water, with this runoff early season, that side of the river will be mud. People ask me all the time about the mud, and look at that. Oh, we got off.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That was a nice little brownie.
Yeah.
Usually this time of year, there's a pretty good stripe on that. About a third of the river will be dark brown, chocolatey mud. And people ask me a lot about that. I don't like to fish in the mud when it has a high granular, when it's really a lot of dirt coming through it. I tend to fish the edges of it pretty hard, but once it stops having the mud in it and it's just off color, I absolutely love it. And when it's green, where you don't see in like today, I wish it would never stop. I wish this is how it always was. That's my favorite, especially like on this river. Quake Lake gets really green, but this sediment, the granular stuff like sand settles out in the lake, and all you have is the color. That is absolutely perfect. These fish do not need to see to eat. They eat off of vibration. They have no problem picking up a 20 nymph in dirty water. But I don't like the granular part of it. Once that's gone though, then it's beautiful. This 2-fly, the way I'm running this, is a really, it's a really simple way to fish. And it's up to you how you want to twitch this. I don't like to do big bounces like that until I get a fish on it. Oh. Watch this. This is a barbless hook. He ate the jig. These are barbless hooks. I had a couple people write in tell me I was dry-handing fish too much. They're probably right. It's hard to get down there. Not a bad idea to get your hand wet. But what I was saying before that fish interrupted, that was the 4th fish that's ate this rig. So it's a 2-fly rig. We started out with it, got a small one up and a jig on the bottom. And what I was saying is, this is a particularly good way if you want to teach somebody to jig, or not to jig, but to streamer fish, and you don't want to have giant flies. You're just using a streamer or a floating line, not set up completely for streamers. You can see it's really all I'm doing is twitching it, and I had that fish eat just before I said what I don't like to see are big movements, only because when you get a really big movement like this, a lot of dead time when that fly's floating and you don't really see the eats. But this is a spectacular way to teach a kid to fish streamers, somebody that's never done it, because it's really, they can twitch it like this, they can use their rod. You can do a lot of things with these little flies, excuse me, that because they're not sinking, I just had another eat, they're not sinking super fast, so they're not getting hung up and everything. Great where there's a lot of woody structure, because it's, again, they're bait fish. Bait fish tend to pod up and get schooly, right? And so and they hang around woody places, any kind of structure, so it's really common for the fish to see them in there, but it's not gonna dive so fast that you gotta have ultimate control. You can as long as your line's tight, you'll feel the fish eat it. The fish that I lost before that rainbow was a pretty nice brown, so that's a good indication that everybody out there is eating. So I don't like to strip like this so much. This particular setup, again, that's why it's so versatile for teaching. I like to jig my rod. I like to move the flies with the rod, but this is a system where it doesn't kill you just to do short strips like this either, so it makes it really good for teaching kids, newbies, whatever. If you're gonna strip with these, try to vary your lengths of your strips, like lots of little ones, maybe a long pull. Just make it look like a bait fish. You're just, people don't think enough about why they're doing what they're doing. They're just kind of pulling it. Try to think like you're a fish, if you were a minnow, you wouldn't be making 3-foot long movements. You'd be making little tiny movements. So this is what all the fish that I've seen have been eating, is this little jig. It's super simple. It's got a little bit of white marabou in there. You can't really see it. It's the polar chenils around it for the body. And then it's just got marabou. This is one I saw in the shop. I'll find out the name of it. I haven't got one on it yet, but kind of similar. Got a little flank on it. And all we're doing is we're running 2. I got one on a dropper so I can change that. I have not got to eat on this fly yet. And so you can do it eye to bend. Like if I wanted to tie this in on the eye here and off the bend, that's fine too, but it's more complicated when I want to change, because this way I've got this one bouncing around and I can change it 2 or 3 times, but that's what we're doing. It's just a tiny little, they're just fry. And so I want to show you how I would set up, excuse me, how I would set up on this run, because one of the comments we get a lot, because we fish from boats so much out here, and really a lot of people do, but a lot of people are stuck wading, or like to, or whatever, want to wade fish. And so I want to show you 2 or 3 things, because one of the things that when I'm doing seminars and I tell people that I wade a lot, but I wade on upstream when I fish my streamers mostly, and that really doesn't set well with a lot of people, because the traditional streamer fishing that people did forever ago would be simply to come right here and throw down and across, and they would basically do a swing like you would for a steelhead, and they would come across and swim it like this. And so what I'm going to show you is kind of and that's not to say that doesn't work, because there's been hundreds and hundreds of fish caught doing this, but it's not as accurate to a fleeing fish or to what a fish would truly do. It's very passive, right? And so, but just to show you, if I was going to start someone, I always try to go cross stream. And so right here, I'm going to before you, and this is really important in dry fly fishing or nymphing, fish the water you're about to wreck before you go and wreck it, right? So even if it's not a great setup for you, that you're not really going to be able to fish this well if you were going downstream, hit the first 15 or 20 feet with real close to you. Just go real tight, throw to the middle, and throw right through here. You see, I'm just twitching it through here, and I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times, and I'm going to catch this beautiful little edge right where my flies are right now. All right, and so you can see that they're about where the flies hit. It's about 20, 25 feet. So now I'm going to go out and throw to that bank. Excuse me. I'm going to throw to that bank, and I'm going to bring it all the way across. But I've already fished that, what I'm about to walk through. So every cast that I do will end up probably about where I ended, and I didn't wreck that water. So I sectioned off the middle, I didn't put much effort into it. But now I'm going to do kind of how I would fish this channel, because it's too deep for me to go out there. I would come pretty much straight across, and I would come right across like that, having my flies go across the water, not tail first. So now you can see my fly just went through. It ended right where I ended my few casts, and now I can just step it off. And so you can go slightly downstream because you're just twitching these minnows, but I want them to be coming off the bank. I don't like them to go real long, straight down, straight below me like right there. But when you get to the bottom of it, every swing, if you're getting a follow, is going to eat it when it goes like this, right? And if you've swung many flies of any sort, wet, steelhead, I don't care, streamer, you're going to get you usually get eaten in this first, right there. You're going to start twitching off that bank. And then if you don't have ultimate control of your fly, it's going to speed up. If you've got something following it through there right now, it gets to the end of that swing and it stops right there. That's going to be your impact. So that's when they're going to eat you, is right there. One thing to remember when they eat below you like that, if you can, it's really hard to do. It takes a little control. When they eat it, you'll feel a thump a lot. But the problem is you're tight on the fly, and when you hit like this, it doesn't give them time to settle in on it. If you can do what's called a slip strike, when you get to being aware of the fact that you probably, if you don't get it over there, the center is usually a really low percentage eat. It's almost always going to be, on the bank or 3, 4, 5 feet out. Then you'll get your swing through, and if there is something following it, it'll hit it right here. So if you can get used to get right down here, pick your rod up, drop it. If you get an eat, slip that line. It gives the fish time, enough slack that they've hit it and they can close down on it. It's a wet fly technique, and I'm telling you, it'll double, when you get used to it, it'll double your hookups, because when you'll feel them down, you always do that. It's like, damn it, I got hit at the bottom again. It's because you're too tight and you move too fast on it. So, across, twitch, twitch, twitch. Now I'm throwing my line up a little bit so I can keep it coming across right here. And I'm just coming, it's a pretty deep run, so I doubt there's fish in the middle of it. I get to the bottom, I jig it a couple times, just waiting if something hits, and if it does, I slide that line. Come through. And again, because these are little jiggy flies, you get lots of little movement, not a lot of, you don't have to have a giant pull against it. And remember that the line, if you look right in front of me, the fastest water is right in the middle of the river. So it's going to get a bow, it's going to put a bow in your line, and it's going to speed up. If you look at my line, if you just sit there, that current's pushing the fly line, and it's going to make your fly just nuke through the water. So if you can go across a little bit, even up, and twitch right there, and just keep it coming across with your line off the water so it's not getting that big belly, your fly will go much slower. It's pretty pushy in the middle of this. I'm not too confident there's any fish on it. I do like this edge right here though. There's a cute edge. So I've got a convergent now. I got a convergent seam. I don't put too much emphasis on the outside of a bend that's sweeping like that. Really hard for the fish to hold in that water. And so, but now they're converging in here, and you look down here and you can see this beautiful ledge right there on the edge of the shallow gravel point. I'm gonna hit this right through here, same way. I'm gonna come, just turn around, I'm gonna hit this, come through it, and I'm just gonna be paying attention to the 2 or 3 foot on each side, right there. Each side, on each side of the point. Q fish. Q Kelly miss fish. I'm not worried about that deep water on the other side of it. I just don't, it's just low percentage. The fish that ate right there was exactly where he should have been. He was right on that point, just on the edge. He was probably in 12 inches of water, 3 foot of water, not a foot away from him, because it's a really steep bend. Now I'm in too much push down here. I just don't think I'm going to find fish once I get past that. And again, that side's too fast. So now we're going to move up here, and we're going to do this. I fished the bottom. I fished that outside edge. I fished this before I walked through it, and you can see this is a ledge, right? You've got a beautiful color change right here. I'm standing right on the color change. I step out here, 1.5 feet, 2 foot, and I've gained a lot of pressure. I'm getting pushed backwards, right? I'm not getting pushed backwards right here. And the same thing goes for the fish. If it's kicking your butt out here and you're having trouble standing there, so would a fish. So I come into this right on this break. I'm dead right perfectly on the ledge, and it's hardly moving at all. And that's all that's what the fish is looking for. So let's move up to this little riffle here. We're gonna fish. I'm gonna fish the edge like I would if I was, walking upstream. Pretty much gonna fish this edge. As I get up there, I'll kick some across just like we did here. Try to fish both edges if I can. Generally you can't. I mean, usually, like if we were on the other side of this river, pan over here, Braden, and we were fishing that side, obviously you wouldn't have much other than the edge, right? So I'm gonna kind of fish this up above here like we were on a big river like that, not like a little spring creek here. This is just a channel, but so I love talking about reading water because I truly believe it is what differentiates great anglers from average or below anglers. And it truly is the difference between somebody who guides for a living. A great guide is nothing more than the person that reads water better than the next person, because they know where the fish are. More times you find the fish. And you'll hear a common phrase is foam is home. And what that means is you can see these bubbles on the surface. Those bubbles are telling you that is the holding lane. That is the water. Excuse me. I'm going to lose my voice here if you're lucky. That's the what. When you look at this run and you see the bubbles, you can see what I just talked about below me here was this ledge. So I've got this beautiful soft kind of platey water, glass plate water over here that's not much movement to it. You look right beside that is bubbles, and the other side is a tiny little wave train. That is an absolute indicator that the softest water is underneath those bubbles. So you don't have to waste your time hucking them out in the middle. If you want to find the fish quickly, look for these seams that are holding the fish. And so when I fish these, I generally don't fish more than 30 feet above me. And even though the water's pretty slow, you kind of lose control when the fly gets close to you. So you don't try to overcast it, you fish it in shorter windows. So I'm gonna fish this in like, I don't know, 8-foot retrieves or so, maybe 10. And I'm just straight up and I'm jigging. And what I'm trying to do, if you watch, I try to keep control of the fly line. I don't want it to get below me like that because I can't set the hook. And it's not as big a deal with these tiny flies, but it's a huge deal when you're throwing a bigger fly because the fly will actually lose control. It'll get below it and you won't be animating at all. It'll just be falling down pretty much dead drift. And so I'm gonna fish this straight up, retrieve, retrieve, retrieve. When I think I'm out of control, I just start again. The further you cast this, the harder it'll be for you. I kind of lock it in at about 30 feet. And then just keep control of the fly. There's what's called a push eat. And a push eat is when a fish comes from behind your fly. You could be throwing over here and retrieving this way, and the fish comes off the bank and hits it. It can push your fly and it'll make it go slack. And you don't really know it. If you don't pay attention to your line, you'll never see it happen. This is just like compounding that times 10. So it's really important that when you throw this fly up, you finish low and you get control instantly, and watch the line. If the line starts getting slack in it, you're pretty much out of control. If it's tight, you'll see the tip of your fly line will still be upstream. There'll be no slack in it. But once you start seeing it get slack, you're gonna start missing fish. So just fish right up the edge of these things. I'm surprised we didn't get a fish out of here. This is a really good little convergence. And when you see these convergences, you can see the water coming from my right and then the main channel. It's gonna make a ledge no matter what. It's gonna give you perfect holding water. Thought we would have got one right there. Ah. That fish, my line went slack and I saw the line turn to the left and I picked up and I bet that fish ate that floaty little fly above. I just saw my line kind of kick over and it was a little fish, but I didn't feel it. And so that really means that I was somewhat out of control. Usually upstream fishing, you're fishing pretty shallow because you're fishing the bank, generally, at least on this river, not always. In a lot of rivers you can get in the middle and fish to the edges. That's my preferred deal. That's why I like the boat so much. Braden just made a great point while I was walking up this. Sometimes you have to make a long cast. Sometimes, all right, I'm not gonna wade up there, so I wanna throw up there 40 feet and I see that little bucket up there. It's still the same thing. Don't try, even though if you stretch it out here and you're throwing further, don't try to retrieve it all the way back. You'll waste time, you'll lose control. Just fish that same 10-foot section that you would if you were doing a short cast. But if you try to retrieve it all the way to your feet, you'll get out of control. Just fish fish a shorter section of retrieve when it's coming at you. Even if you throw a long ways up there, just retrieve in 10-foot sections or so, and you just won't get out of control, and you'll have a better hook set. I mean, I was pretty close. Whoops. I was pretty close on that one right there. I didn't feel that, and that fish couldn't have been 10 feet in front of me. But I was losing control towards the bottom of my drift. I didn't fish this soft water right below here. I'm going to throw this over, walk back to the boat. I want you to see something over there though. That log looks really good right there. But really, if you're going to break water down as far as reading it, you can see how it's kicking off. The log isn't doing it, but it looks like the log is, but that's not doing it. The depression into the bank where that tree died, the water's going into it and kicking out. It's going in and it speeds up when it goes around the corner. That is really low percentage water. But that soft water where you can see over there the bubbles, that's premium. So it's as easy as looking for the break, and if it speeds up, look for the break right behind it. It's just, that's where your fish are gonna hang. They will not fight that heavy water. So I'm gonna take one right beside it, and I'm gonna let it swing around that edge while I come in, and then I'm gonna go right behind it to the bank and twitch them out. I really only care about 3 foot of that retrieve, right there in that soft glassy water, because I don't really think they'd be hanging in that bigger pushy water. And again, if you're teaching somebody, a newbie or whatever, if you can get them just to do this, it's not really a retrieve, but if you can get them to take the littler flies and just get them to move, even if it's just this, or you have them throw across stream and just kind of pull the line like that, it's a great starter. It's how most kids started in the old days. Or you can get one on the hang down. These are all barbless hooks, so they come out really smooth, and they're really tiny. He ate the upper flats, first one that has. Made a mess of things for a second. So we'd already fished that water upstream. That's called the hang. I threw that across right there into that skinny water, and basically was just gonna turn around and leave. I got lucky because I was on a tight line, but my fly was right there in that bubble line, and he ate it after we fished it the other way. So there you go. They break all the rules, right? And I swung this and let him hang in it on the first time through. So you never know, did that fish follow it? Did that fish follow it all the way off the bank and hit it as it hung? Or did he come up from behind? You never know. But even a blind pig finds an acorn once in a while. So I rigged up, I didn't show it when I started, so I just stopped here. I rigged up a swivel rig, and I just and we put on Braden's grandfather's favorite fly, the Montana bucktail, which is a Royal Coachman bucktail. And so I've got just a barrel swivel here, a 1/32 ounce bullet weight, which is designed to go to peg, or to put down on the nose for traditional gear, or to run like this is considered a Carolina rig. So you've got your weight above the swivel, and you've got your fly back here. And I mentioned it earlier, there's no problem with doing this whatsoever. I've got this one a little close, maybe 14 inches, but the swivel, if you're fishing really big flies, you should really think about running a swivel like this with a barrel if you want to put the weight above it. But for nothing else, the flies that are really big, when you get into like big drunken disorderlies and just some of the bigger musky style flies, they'll twist your line up. It's a good idea to put it in, but all I did was run that bullet weight on there, which is up here, and we fished 2 or 3 different styles of flies with it. This goes down, the fly hovers above it, it doesn't follow it like this, so you come over something and then this kind of flutters around. I switched to a swivel rig I've been getting asked this quite a bit lately about my, I don't know why, opinion about running swivels. And we've done it for years, especially in the old, when we first started going into the really big flies and some of the flies that had a tendency to twist, like especially when you got into the 8, 10, 12-inch flies, which I completely aborted that. I don't use them anymore, but I never thought they caught bigger fish. Touchdown, Tommy. And I think I forgot to turn, oh, good. Got lucky, I forgot to pinch that barb. But like I was saying, I wanted to, people were asking me, and they're great for when flies spin, because flies will spin up just like they do with conventional tackle. A big fly can spin your leader and your fly line. I don't fish swivels so much for that. I used to swim, I use them in lakes sometimes for a slower descent. And I used them for a long time for just so I didn't have to tie blood knots between my butt section and my leader. But I tended to leave that on way too long. And so I kind of like the fact that I have to change the butt section after a while and I don't just leave it. I found myself one year, I had on a 250 rig, a 250 grain sinking line, I had a swivel on and I did not change the butt section the entire season. And I didn't like that because I like the fact that you change them up and you got fresh stuff on there. Either a 3/16 tungsten bead or I take a small lead bullet weight and I put that on. I'm about 12 to 16 inches above the fly to the swivel. Oh.
Hello, fishy.
It's been 20 years since I've thrown the Montana, oh crap, bucktail. This is a Royal Coachman. I have not sold this fly. I sell it in the shop, but I don't think I've sold one of these in 20 years. This, in one phase or another, at one point on this river, people would throw a Royal Coachman dry, wet, or bucktail almost exclusively on this river in the old days. And so I've got a totally weightless fly. We've just got 2 fish in, one eat it. It's this big, totally weightless, 6 weight. I've got a swivel with a little, I don't even know how big it is, I have to look and see, bullet head, and 2 fish have eaten it. Again, if you're starting somebody out, all I'm doing is throwing it out and pulling it in. I'm not doing anything fancy. If you wanted to, just like the other ones, if you want to strip this one, there's just so little profile and so little real movement. It's not like you're engaging like a dungeon where you have the thing going like that. And so I'm just really pulling it back. And I'll bet you the fish haven't seen this fly, and I'll bet there hasn't been one here in 20 years. I mean, never sell them anymore. So it's kind of proved the point that they never quit eating these things. We just feel like we have to change it up. The biggest fish I've hooked in this section, I think maybe that one I lost up there is the biggest one I've had here ever in this section. And that was a traditional number 4 woolly sculpin, nothing to it, conehead woolly sculpin. So it's kind of proving the point. We don't have to go crazy on the big stuff. Now both on this bucktail, they're both little fish, but you never know. The big one could eat it too. I think these flies are considered decorations more than they are fishing flies anymore, because we've got so crazy in the size of our flies. As soon as I get the next fly I'm putting on is going to be a micro dungeon, which is 1.5 inches long, I think. I'm going to throw that when we go through this rock pile down here. And I'm going to keep the bullet weight on the swivel rig and just let that fly flutter around, kind of. I'll stall that one a little bit more. One thing about when you're running swivel rigs or twist-ons, I said it earlier about, I'm not sure, I think I said it earlier about your weight is below the fly, so the fly is hovering, which makes it really efficient for fishing woody structure areas or anything that you can get hung up on, like boulder fields. It usually will flutter the fly up above it. Gives it a really cool kick. Great for small movie flies like little muddlers and stuff like that. Boy, it gets them down just enough, but it lets them float up a little bit and flutter. We did the double fly rig with a dropper loop with small bait fish imitations, particularly like those in the spring. I love to have just 2 flies 16 inches apart. Both flies are that long. We did that first. But again, sticking with the single hook, what I'm trying to get across is you don't have to be all that fancy. You don't have to be all the whole sinking line like we do most of the time. We're just finding different ways to get the fly about this deep, maybe that deep. And we're using a traditional 6-weight, and just twist-ons, a bead, or a cone head. That's all we're doing, or a jig. And I started out with but it's still a 3/16 tungsten bead, and we just jigged it. So it's worked out pretty good. It's been a good show. Hope you liked it. Hope it helps you out. I forgot that if you like it, hit the like button. What is it? Hit the like and subscribe. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit the subscribe and hit the like button. We really appreciate it.